Hey everybody, Gremlin here with the Gremlin Gamer. And so this is going to be kind of a weird video, short video. Primarily, I was just wanting to show some builds I'm working with. Uh, the other one, I guess I should have posted sooner with Iron Banner almost over with. But I'm no master of PvP by any regard, but I'm not bad. And I actually came up with a pretty decent build that worked pretty consistently for me playing through Iron Banner. I also was going to show a art build I've been working with. But also, before I get into all that, I just kind of wanted to make some comments on the current uh, situation with Sony at the moment. And yeah, they're like supremely fucking up. Uh, it's kind of hard to sit here and say, yeah, we're going full digital. We're not going to, we're going to completely just give up on physical media altogether. Yet we just got, you know, committed piracy, is what they did. Sony basically sold a ton of freaking movies to people through the PSN network that they did not actually own. They themselves were licensing these films. They didn't actually own them, but they sold them to us like they did, and like we were getting an actual copy of this game that, or I'm sorry, movie that so long as Sony's ever in business, you would be able to, reclaim even if you know, uninstalled it or whatever. Oh no, they went into your shit and disabled those movies because, oh, well, sorry, we no longer have the right to them, which means you no longer have the right to them. Okay, then give me a refund. Oh, too bad, so sad, you can't get a refund. You know, they pull a stunt like that, and then we're supposed to be comfortable with the idea of doing the same thing with our video games, which are way more expensive than movies. No, no. I mean, I'll be honest, I've gotten kind of lazy about buying a lot of my games digital here simply just for convenience because it is hard to find physical copies of stuff. I was actually really amazed and thrilled when I found a physical copy of the Dragon Quest VII remake. Um, but admittedly, yeah, I bought Borderlands 4. I didn't go for the physical copy, and I should have. I want to play it first day. I'm going to get digital. Um, I won't make that mistake again. Here going out, any other games I purchase that can be in physical format, I'm buying in physical format. But the problem is too is it's a double-edged sword because there's a lot of these games that, oh, you're physically getting the disc, but that whole game is not on that disc. What's interesting is like, oh, okay, so then it's just basically a key, an access key, and you'll download it. Well, that's not much different than just digital. The disc is still kind of just useless if the game is not on that. Back in the day, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, if a game was too big to fit on a single disc, a lot of times it would come on multiple discs. That was not completely unusual. There was a lot of games that came out that way, especially RPGs. Even though they chose that format for the very reason that it has so much space, well, that's part of it, And I'm sorry, discs are not that expensive, What you're actually supposed to be paying for is the content. The physical material is not really that expensive. Um, but anyways, I digress. So come along PlayStation 2. Well, now we're using Blu-ray. And now these things have a memory capacity. I mean, they're able to hold so much more information. You don't necessarily need multiple discs for a game. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't remember any multi-disc PlayStation 2 games, but I'm not saying that there aren't any that don't exist. But the tech made them kind of just useless. Just unnecessary. You really had enough room on most of those game discs to hold everything. Um, PlayStation 3, I'm pretty sure we were still at a point where everything is on there except for, okay, DLC, for example, Borderlands 4. Yeah, that DLC is not on the disc, you know. Uh, and I'm sure there's other games there like that. PS4 is when I really started seeing more of this, of where the games are literally too big to actually fit on the disc. Even if you're using not Blu-ray. Did I say Blu-ray earlier? DVD. PlayStation 2 used DVD. Sorry, which uh, I forgot how much more information that is over a regular CD, but it's quite a bit. But then once again, I think it was PlayStation 3 is when they were started using Blu-ray. Once again, it's a format that can hold a crap ton of freaking information. So multiple discs was not really necessary, even for the massive games that we're producing. But I think by PlayStation 4, yeah, even Blu-ray can't hold the amount of data that these games are requiring. I mean, hell, good example too is PlayStation Collection. I'm sorry, PlayStation Collection. Good Lord, Borderlands Collection for the Wii. I grabbed a copy of that for myself and my nephew, and that being once again kind of the big selling point for the I'm sorry, not the Wii. Wow, the Switch. Is that it went back to actually using cartridges because 40 years later, that technology is actually super cheap now. It's on par with, disc technology as far as cheapness to produce. And there were some definite benefits to that technology too. It was just dramatically faster. Um, but the example I was using was the Borderlands collection. Well, Borderlands 1 was the only game actually on the cart. The other remaining games, Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel, you had to download online onto, memory card because all three of those games did not fit on that cartridge, and it didn't simply give you a cartridge for each game, which I got to say, I think in the old days, that's what they would have done, uh, or stacked it somehow. I don't know. I mean, that was one of the things that was unique about, especially the Super Nintendo eras, that you had games that, hey, this is a 32 meg cart. It's got more game in there. There's more shit saved in here, and it's going to cost a little bit more. For better or worse, that was kind of normal back then. Um, and I'm sure that, multi disc games in some way were probably more expensive to a certain degree over a single disc game. I was there, I paid for the stuff, but I honestly don't remember. Um, but anyways, the bigger picture here is that Sony just like keeps stepping in it. Uh, Kill Destiny and then turn around and say, "Oh, we want to really, invest and expand into live service." It's like, well, dude, you literally just shut down one of the longest running successful live service games in existence. Aside from you know some MMOs like Final Fantasy 14 or God forbid uh, Fortnite, Destiny, for better or worse, has been there. And guess, like people pointed out, when Destiny, flubbed, it was when there was a drought in content, or the content that was provided was substandard. We also know that it was an outright lie that they were trying to say that, oh, that, it underperformed. It really wasn't that profitable. It's like, no, we can see through, all these other documents and reports that all the money that was generated by Destiny, which was a shit ton, got misappropriated. It went to went to stockholders. It went to fucking CEOs and executives. It went into other projects, but very little of it actually went back into Destiny 2. And when it did, it showed. The game popped. People came back. We see that right now with the latest update. It's like, dude, that's been a month now, and it's still the player count is still not dropped. People are here for the long run, and they would continue to be here for the long run, and and they could be making money from it. But no, we're short-sighted and stupid, and we're going to believe a bunch of bullshit, analytics instead of what's really right there in our fucking face. And then this these other steps in regards to the full digital and how they've handled that. It's like, okay, trust us on this. When we just completely shit on a bunch of people. Uh, but anyways, it's gonna come back to bite them. I'm really disgusted with them. I'm really disappointed, especially after them literally 180 from, if anybody remembers back in the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, where they themselves like, no, you're not going to be stuck to a license agreement. You buy a game, it's yours. You want to share it with a friend or let them borrow it, they can, you know. And Xbone backpedaled like crazy because they realized, whoa, we're fucking up, you know. And but now everybody's pushing for that model. All the software companies have pretty much accepted this. You know, you don't buy software anymore. You simply buy, get a subscription. And it's just like, no, no, absolutely not, you know. Um, and now they're backpedaling and basically trying to pull the same crap, you know. Even they, it's funny. I think it was even Pizza Hut or somebody like basically made a meme using their own shit from back at that particular trade show, them basically saying, hey, yeah, you actually get what you're paying for. It's here. You can give it to your friends. You can loan it to it's yours to do with as you please. Anyways, yeah, it's a wild time. It's really crazy. But anyways, that's it for my rant on that. Let's get into the builds real quick. So right now, actually, I do have my art build up, and we're basically kind of running the classic gifted conviction setup. So what this does is it gives activating ascension or tempest strike throws bouncing explosives at nearby targets that jolt and damage them. Jolting nearby targets grants you damage resistance. This is especially useful, and it's going to help us stay alive. It also jolts everything, which is going to be important because that's another aspect of this. Is the more you jolt enemies, you can once they're jolted, they're easy to blind, and when they're blind, between that and your damage resistance, you're pretty much immune because most enemies are not even going to be able to hit you, and if they do, you won't take much damage. And we're also going to be generating a ton of ionic, whatever they're called. Bloody hell. Get over here. Uh, Ionic charges, ionic trace, bolt of pure arc energy that travels along the ground and picked up ionic trace's grand ability energy. Now, from what I understand, initially this just seems like okay, your dodge or whatever, which is essential because the more we can get that up, the more often we can use ascension. And I'll get into this in a second. Um, but from what I remember hearing somebody say in another video, ionic traces actually give you energy towards all of your stuff, your grenades, your melee, and your class ability. But anyways, we're gonna get to that in a second. I just want to focus on equipment and setup first. So that is the class exotic class chest piece that we're using. Obviously, the other thing you want to do with this build is you kind of want to split your stats, if possible, between melee, class ability, and your weapons. The reason why is because we're primarily using Ascension, which does get extra power from your class stat. Also, once you get over 100, it does give you an overshield when you use your class ability, which is really kind of really doesn't matter because we're already getting massive damage resist buff just by doing Ascension with this chest piece. But anyways, more than anything, we're just wanting to buff this up because it's going to increase the damage that we are able to do with our Ascension. And also, just getting it to 100 is just enough to get improve your cooldown, which still going over still applies towards that as well. And since we're using good lord, what is it called? Tempest Strike, which is your melee ability. When you're dashing and you slide and then hit melee, you'll do like an uppercut that sends a shot of lightning towards an enemy. Now, another thing that while we're focusing on those two abilities, is because we're going to be generating a ton of what is it called? Storm charge, where basically so many stacks, and whenever you use an ability that uses arc damage, it's going to create a lightning bolt. And so you're going to be getting these lightning bolts with Tempest Strike and your melee attack big time because of this. Um, the other thing we're doing, and this is not a hard armor set to farm for, and it definitely takes this build to a different level. But you also want to try and see about getting the Lumipotent grip, Luminipotent armor set. You can get this from doing, I believe, solos, fire team, and possibly onslaught. And so what this armor set does, I'm mostly using it for the four-piece. That's kind of what we need it for. Although if you are using fusion rifles or linears or heat weapons from the Star Wars installment, they will benefit from this from the two-piece buff. But what we're interested in is the four-piece buff, where final blows with jolts or against jolted combatants cryonic traces. So typically, based on your abilities in here, there's a cooldown between the amount that generating ionic traces. Like you have to wait so many kills before you can get another one. This armor set basically completely shuts that down. Like you will get an ionic trace on anything that would trigger an ionic trace. You'll be getting tons of ionic traces if you're doing stuff right, which is going to keep make sure that we can continue to do our good lord ascension. And so yeah, you could take the melee higher. You could take the class higher if you wanted to. Even with 125, we're not getting a dramatic increase in damage. Honestly, we're getting 3%. So this is just kind of how my stats felt. But I could always try to move some of that gun stat to these others because they would benefit more. Um, like even the melee, I'm only getting 6%. But that's something that that's just the nature of this game. It's really tricky to get the stats exactly how you want. I've actually got more of these armor pieces, but it's just like, oh, okay, now I've got to power it up. I don't even think this one's powered up if I'm looking at it. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. So back to the build. Weapons. Honestly, uh, you definitely want something in this slot, whether it be a primary or a secondary, that does electrical damage. So I'm running a no feeling scout, which I actually really like. I'm having a really hard time getting a good tier 5 roll. I've got two tier 5s and a bunch of tier 4s, and the two tier 5s I have are just kind of crappy, honestly. They're just really not particularly good rolls. But this tier 4 is one of the better ones I have, and key thing being is it's got a combo of volt shot and gear shift. So this is really handy because basically both of these work off of reload. Reloading Volt Shot. Reloading this weapon after defeating a target overcharges this weapon for an improved short period of time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. So basically, you shoot, get a kill, reload, and you have, I think, 15 seconds to pull off another shot, and it'll basically cause a big electrical explosion. Gear Shift. Reloading after a final blow or becoming amplified grants a longer period of increased damage. Now, obviously, since I'm running an arc build with things that are triggering amplify, and I'm going to be getting a reload on pretty much every kill, it's real easy to ramp this up, and it is noticeable. When you have this thing up to 5 stacks, it's nasty. Uh, not the it's actually pretty good for 180. I prefer 180 scout rifles. Uh, this one handles really nice. This one's also got some other alternate perks with Maganera, Rapid Hit, but this felt like this combo was working better than running with that. Some other choices. I actually just found this. If you want to use your secondary, uh, I was even experimenting with this. but it's just too hard to get, kills consistently to a point. I don't know. Bows are just not meta right now, and I guess they never will be. But anyways, key thing is whether it be a primary or secondary weapon, you want something that will give you some electrical, either volt charge or jolting feedback's a good one. Um, or stuff that works into rolling storm is another good one because that's going to help with that jolting feedback. Sorry, the feedback loop of being able to drop those storms on people. Um, Up here, whatever works. Whether if you're running a good arc primary here, you could just kind of run whatever you're like as far as your secondary up here, as far as arc or really doesn't matter. Um, and then on the super, I'm personally really liking the micro mort right now. This thing is stupidly strong. I was actually surprised at how powerful it is. Uh, this one actually has bait and switch, but I'm not even using the bait and switch. I'm just using reconstruct and paracausal affinity, and yeah, it's doing some serious damage. I'm really impressed with it. Um, Anyways, let's get into, oh yeah, as far as how the setups on these go. So uh, we don't have a lot in super, so to compensate for that, I'm actually running two super fonts on my headgear, as well as kinetic siphon to help with the orb generation. On the hands, same thing to help boost this damage up higher. I'm running double melee fonts on the hand gear and focus strike to help once again help boost our class ability energy. Chest piece using charge up in the health font. Once again, health is not really as important in PvE, but it doesn't hurt to have that little bit of something there. I don't know. You could probably run something else here, like a defensive thing, like an elemental defense or one of these general defenses. Uh, I just sometimes, I don't know. It just felt like a good thing to do. It could be just stupid, but that's how I'm working it. This also comes in handy just for increasing your stacks. Um, I know somebody had put out a video mentioning that because you get orbs so often that you typically don't need that fourth one. Um, I would say that's probably more likely if you're playing in groups, like if you're playing, with randos, you're playing, in team. But if you're playing solo, this is probably worth getting just because it helps you maintain. I mean, a lot of times, if we're being honest, by the time you get from one engagement to the next, even if you've got four armor charges, by the time you get to the next engagement, they probably all have worn off by then. Not always, but it's just kind of a play it by ear thing, whatever you want. Chess piece setup for me is just kind of tricky. It's just kind of play it by ear, more or less. Um, Boots. Whoops. Boots, we're running weapons font, enhanced athletics, which I pretty much always put on the boots no matter what character I'm playing, just because I like having that extra bit of mobility. Um, and absolution, which I kind of forgot what that does. Once again, just picking up an orb reduces the cooldown of all of our abilities. So it's just kind of general use. You could realistically, if you wanted, you could throw in another weapons font. Um, I right now, like I'm pretty sure just a single weapons font adds 20 points um, to that stat when it's active. So right there, that pushes my weapons up to almost 150. Um, Double stacking them, I think gives you 40. I could be wrong about that. Um, But anyways, this is what I prefer to run on this. Then on our cloak, once again, because we just kind of want to get our class ability up as often as possible, running 2 class fonts and powerful attraction. So for our class setup, Gambler's Dodge, this is just kind of like bread and butter when you're running a melee focused class, because it's helps you create a loop where use your melee and you can get it back using your class ability, and then using your melee again gives you your class ability back, so you have just a constant loop where you always have one or the other available to you. Uh, Combination blow, just because this can get nasty real fast. You get 3 kills and it basically stacks the damage for a short while. Uh, it's personally one of my all-time favorites, and it hits like a truck once you get it powered up. And even before you get it powered up, it still just does a lot of damage with this particular build. And this can also trigger bolt charge, as far as setting off a nice little chunk of lightning on somebody. Grenade wise, I just prefer pulse grenade. You can use whatever grenade you prefer, but I just prefer these. And we're using Tempest Strike and Ascension. So both of these are the abilities that you're able to make use of with that chest piece. With this one, while sliding, activate your melee ability, unleash a devastating uppercut. Attack that travels along the ground in front of you, damaging and jolting targets. Defeating jolted targets grants a stack of bolt charge. So you're basically you can set off bolt charge and get bolt charge back with this. And similarly, long press your class ability while airborne. Consume your class ability energy to summon your arc staff, propelling yourself upward and creating a burst of energy around you that amplifies allies and jolts targets. This ability damages increases with your class stat when your class stat is 100 or higher. And so once again, this is an easy way to get amplified and stay amplified, and we want to be amplified because that guarantees us damage resist, and it makes it easier for us to jolt and blind enemies. So you're going to be using both of these quite a bit, probably one right after the other, because the way this loop works with these things, you're going to be able to keep generating one after the other. So as far as our aspects, we are running with Spark of Frequency. So once again, melee hits increase your equipped weapons, reload speed, and stability for a short duration. That's not as important as the second part. While amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. So once again, this is going to allow you to generate those lightning strikes quite often. Spark of Ions, defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. There's one of your main ways of getting those first of all. Finishers make you amplified and grant you a stack of bolt charge. This one could probably be interchangeable with other things, but this is just something I like because once again, it's giving you another way to access bolt charge. It's basically the idea is we want to be dropping lightning bolts on as often as possible. This is the easiest way to take out yellow bars in a single swoop. Arc grenade dart targets. This is one I don't typically use, but once again, we're trying to get as many jolts because when enemies are jolted, this increases the likelihood of them being blinded if it does not right kill them. And lastly, arc weapon final blows have a chance to create ionic traces. Collect the ionic trace grants you a stack of bolt charge. So once again, it's feeding into this. It's making sure that we always have, we're generating tons of ionic traces, which not only are they going to be giving us class ability and possibly other energies, it's also going to give us more bolt charge. So like I said, you're going to be able to drop lightning on people right and left with this. All right, so we covered the gear, covered the mods, covered the weapons and the class. So that's that for this. Oh, almost forgot. This is important as well. So this is the artifact we're using. We're using the encrypted data disk. We're using arc-powered melee hits jolt combatants and deal further damage for short durations. That's going to make your combination blow even nastier. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to spawn an arc elemental orb. Arc orbs can be thrown or shot to create an arc explosion that jolts targets and enemies. This is nice. They don't drop all the time, but when they do, they're because I think there's a cooldown on it. But man, they're nice. It's almost like having just a little electric bomb that you can throw for free. Precision final blows build progress towards a large orb of power that also grants bonus weapon damage on pickup. Higher ranked targets grant more progress. And you'll know these when you see them because they're big. And when you collect them, obviously, it gives you a nice little buff to your damage. Final blows on jolted combatants, blind nearby combatants. This is key. And it's just ridiculous how well it works because they will literally stand around doing nothing, just helpless. Defeating arc buff targets grants bolt charge. There we go. Another way to get bolt charge. Rapidly defeating arc buff targets spawns an orb of power and heals a small portion of health. So once again, that's going to also help us keep our armor charges up. Because basically, like I said, we're really buffing the hell out of certain stats with armor charge. So it's always good to try and keep that up as much as possible as well. Rapid final blows against weakened combatants grant you Devour. Now, this is one, just because I couldn't find anything better, but I'm actually trying to borrow from another build I saw where somebody was using a void weapon instead of an arc weapon. But this is you're getting so many advantages from using an arc weapon that this just doesn't really work so well. This might be something that would work better if you're running like a arc centric prismatic build, maybe. Um, or if you have, I guess, a good void heavy weapon, like possibly like a hammerhead with destabilizing rounds. Because once again, you're usually generating enough heavy ammo that you could use that with this if you wanted. But if I'm being honest, once again, there's got to be something else I could choose for this because aside from not really having a way to trigger it, once again, we're pretty much immune to damage because of being amplified and such. Let's see if there's anything else we can use here. Uh, Breaking combat shield grants weapon stability handling reels. Blah, blah, blah. We're not really using swords though. We're also not really using anything else that would benefit from this. So I guess this would probably be the best thing. And then lastly, finishers grant grenade and melee energy. So once again, this is just my selection on this. The truth is that there are 6 different artifacts, and there are at least 2 others that actually have pretty decent setups if you're trying to make an arc build. So there might be one that you prefer, like I think, which one was it? Like this one's another one that's really good because it has dielectric. Um, but this one you may not have to worry so much about using electric weapons to get your arc damage. It's just kind of it's a matter of experimenting, trial and error, and just seeing what works best with the build and your play style. They organize these in such a way that it's really hard to just really dig some serious juice out of them, especially depending on whatever element. It's very void friendly, I will say that in most cases. And actually, if anything really got kind of under represented here is solar abilities and solar damage. But Arc and Void actually came out pretty good on this. There's actually some good perks towards Strand and Stasis as well. Anyways, let me get into the PvP build real quick. Alright, so this is the setup I was using for Iron Banner. So PvP, your setup is going to be dramatically different. With this, we're going with a Void build. Me personally, I suck with shotguns. Out of practice with fusion rifles. Most of the PvP maps are too small to really make good use of snipers. I found for someone of my skill level that for your best secondary weapon is almost always going to be a glaive. They have slightly better range. I'd say the range is probably on par with a fusion rifle, so it's going to outrange a shotgun. It just doesn't quite hit as hard as a shotgun. A lot of times you're going to need to follow up. But that's the benefit, unlike a shotgun or fusion rifle, where if you've expended your first two shots and you don't have any ammo left, you're kind of just screwed. This, you actually have the ability to, if you're in lunge range with your melee ability in general, you will be able to lunge forward with your glaive as well. I've done it several times where I've hit somebody with the uh, projectile attack and then close the distance just enough to lunge forward and finish him off with the physical attack. And it's just easy to overwhelm somebody with a glaive at close range, especially if you're strafing. It makes it harder for them to try and counter with with their own melee, which is not impossible. But to me, it's just I like using glaives as a secondary weapon. In this, and there's actually some good choices for both. Personally, for up here, I prefer to use the refusal of the call. It's an adaptive. And basically, you want to go with something that has really high range and high impact, but also I prefer this one over the rake angle just because this one isn't aggressive. And it is noticeably slower both on your attack but it does have a lot better handling. But it's just a lot slower. This one's actually a good roll even for PvP because we have Chill Clip and Rhyme Stealer, and Chill Clip will slow down enemies, so you can pop them twice. You probably only have two shots anyways, and if that didn't kill them, then they're slowed down and they're going to be easy to finish off with the melee. This one here, though, I'm running has a loading holster, which is just kind of okay. It's not bad, but it's not the greatest thing. This is what actually works. Blocking damage with your shield increases projectile damage for improved duration. This is nice because basically, if you run up on an enemy and you still need to close the distance so that even your projectile has the right range, your shield, while your shield is eating the damage of them shooting at you, they're literally helping you boost your damage. So by the time you do get at the right range and your shield's almost out, you can let loose and fire. Um, Probably does more damage in PvE versus PvP, but to me it seems like it definitely helps. Um, but realistically, as far as for this slot, these two are probably my main two choices. There's not a whole lot of choices. I think there's only the Albedo or whatever it is. I don't think there are too many other uh, glaives for this spot. And so I'm running that so that I can run my Battler on this one. And so me, once again, if you're not like a super savvy PvP player, the BXR Battler and the Redrix, this particular frame is just excellent because it gives you a good mix of uh, these guns work really good basically at medium to long range. Um, They are actually really comfortable to use as far as hip fire. Um, the range between hip fire and your aim down sights is just the perfect mix of close and medium range. So if you're not super savvy with PvP, you need a good weapon that's just a nice balance that works in most given situations. These two are basically the best you can get. This one, I believe you have to get through competitive in Crucible. It's not super hard to get. A lot of good rolls, both for PvE and PvP. This one you can get through Dares of Eternity, or if you've already, gotten some of these are another ones that are craftables so that you can actually kind of customize your own roll. Um, But end of the day, honestly, in PvP, use whatever you're comfortable with. It's really not essential. None of these weapons really have any kind of uh, unlike in PvE, where a lot of your weapons and stuff kind of play into your abilities and your build. You don't really have a lot of that in PvP. You're basically just looking for stats and things that are kind of just flat, uh, basic improvements. They're not, feeding off of things. You can, go off of things that feed off of kills and reloads to a certain degree. Um, I don't like to depend too much on those. Like things just like give me a flat, improvement to the weapon, like rangefinder, um, or like like I said, some of these that are counteractive. Like this is, basically by taking damage, it's going to improve my damage. Um, Armor wise, you don't necessarily need an armor set. Like there's probably some out there that would help benefit a straight up PvP build, but I don't have any of that armor right now, so I basically just put on what was going to work for stats. And this is kind of what I was looking for. I really wanted to, in PvP, the higher you can get your health stat, the better. It doesn't really matter in PvE, but in PvP, you definitely want to try and get your armor stat to a minimum of 100 and as high over 100 as possible. It's just going to make you a lot tankier because you are basically super fragile if you have under 100 HP health stat in PvE. Basically, try to keep everything else basic, other than once again, this particular build focuses on making use of our class ability. So we want to make sure that was at least at 100 and our weapon stat at 100. Other than that, we are running with the Radiant Dance machines. So once again, this pairs very nice with these particular weapons. Once again, because it actually makes them they're even more accurate when firing from the hip. It just makes these weapons that much better. Aside from that, it also allows us to it's basically the full thing describes moderately increases airborne effectives and hipfire mobility, range, and accuracy for weapons that use primary ammo. Final blows with primary ammo weapons return dodge energy, which can overflow to create additional charges when full. So basically, we're going to get a lot of dodges back, which we want because what we're focusing on is stealth. We are running vanishing steps, so anytime we dodge, it lets us go invisible. And then we're also running stylish executioner, which honestly you can run whatever you want. Most of these other skills don't inherently help that much in PV. Aside from this, you could try this. Certain more bigger open maps would help, but once again, you're competing now between using your. Well, once again, it shouldn't make any difference. You're getting your this kind of double gives you a double use for your class ability. So yeah, this is probably actually the better thing to run. In fact, I'm going to do that. Kind of a knucklehead. I think the reason why I wasn't doing that though is because I wanted this third stat here. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's why I had this on there. I want this. So realistically, you could either sacrifice this, which is probably unnecessary. For PvP, it probably would be better to have Trapper's Ambush because once again, you're going to be getting your class ability back, and this gives you double utility. It gives you two different ways to activate it. Either way, you're going to go invisible. Um, Activate your air move to consume your class ability energy, dive to the ground, damaging targets on impact, greatly increase striking while you have any void status effect. Damage opponent's ability heals you. Defeating combatants with this ability grants Devour. This ability damage increases with your class. So yeah, So yeah, actually, it would probably be better to double dip into this because it gives you two different ways to use your invis and your class ability, which you're going to be getting back quite often, versus getting that fifth aspect, which is defeat a target when your shields are depleted. I think we're already getting overshielded with other things, anyways. But anyways, once again, this is just kind of to your discretion. This is what I am using. So we're getting void buffs applied. Basically increases your invisibility and your devour should you be able to activate it. Suppressing targets, you gain increased weapon stat for a short period of time. Uh, Melee final blows start healing and regeneration. Funny enough, even though we're using the new melee ability, it's not quite as effective. It's more of a movement thing. Like you can definitely damage an enemy, and I'm pretty sure it does also weaken them. But I usually find myself and immediately turn around and try and counterattack because it doesn't actually take them out. Um, and this is no I like to get just for the simple fact that it gives us an extra just straight up 10 to both our weapons and super. But uh, being able to move faster, and also you get enhanced radar. And admittedly, this aside from the weapon stat in PvE is really the only reason why I get this, because the radar and the sneak speed doesn't really seem to be all that useful. But in PvP, the stats are still nice, but that crouch speed and the enhanced radar definitely helps. Definitely helps. Um, Also, interesting wise, we have a completely different step on this. So once again, you can build for armor charge in PvP, but I don't focus as much on that because you're not getting the amount of orb drops. I mean, not to say there aren't people getting, creating orbs in PvP matches. It's just not on the same level. It's not as consistent. So you don't want to be as reliant on them, is basically the way I look at it. So I tried to focus on more practical ones. So in this, we went with ashes to assets. So our super energy, we'll get basically super energy on grenade kills, which we should be getting, a decent amount of grenade kills in a PvP match. Dynamo reduces super cooldown when using your class ability, which we'll be using quite a bit. And then rapid kinetic weapon blows create an orb of power. Now this actually I probably should have changed because I think when I was doing this I was using my Redrix S stock. Um, but this is one of those ways where you can potentially create orbs. That's what I'm saying. You don't want to completely crap on anything that uses armor charge in PvP, but it's more of just kind of like okay, it's a nice little bonus you get here and there, but you can't really rely on it like you can in PvE. That said, that's what we kind of did here on the hand gear. We got kinetic loader, increases reload speed over kinetic weapons. Obviously, I got to fix that because I'm not using kinetic. Went ahead and threw a font for our melee just because. And then we brought in harmonic loader, which is also supposed to be helping reload speed with void weapon, which kind of actually does work. And where are we at? Chest piece. So once again, we actually did put a font in there to give us that extra little bit of health. Should we actually be lucky enough to have found an orb before running into another fight. Then we got melee resistance, and we threw this on here because it's going to help us with our glaives. Your equipped glaives gain more energy from dealing damage with their ranged attacks. Leg gear. This is where it gets a little interesting. Uh, I was running 3 enhanced athletics before, but I decided because I was seeing occasional orbs of power, I went ahead and threw this in here. So picking up an orb of power grants you 1 additional stack armor charge. This is probably one of the better ones to get as far as armor charge in PvP, for the simple fact that once again you're not going to probably get too many orbs, So this is basically giving you a free armor charge right out the gate, so that when you do get one, you're maximizing its potency. Um, Running at least two of these is going to increase your mobility dramatically. I was actually running three of these initially, and if you got three of these on your leg gear, it's like basically getting it's you're basically wearing the stompies. It pretty much just gives you the exact same buff that you get from wearing stompies, um, which is kind of cool to know. So if you like mobility of stompies, but you don't actually want to rare stompies, um, yeah, you're going to sacrifice some things. But at the very least, even if you only put two on here, you're going to notice a dramatic increase in your mobility. This is especially important, and I would say it's even worth it to sacrifice this and put a third on there, because a lot of the basically, not to say this build is not good for just PvP in general, it is actually more focused for control. Because a lot of my strategy and control is if I showed you most of our post game stats, like I'm usually leading in captures, and the reason why is because I'm literally able to fly across the freaking map. When you have three athletics in here, it is no joke how freaking far you can jump. And I'm using double jump, not even triple jump. So it's like if you're looking to basically be that guy that's constantly one step ahead of the enemy, claiming a spot before they can even get to it. That's the concept behind this build. Um, Cloak. Once again, we're using powerful attraction just so if there are any orbs nearby, we can get them. So once again, you should be using your class ability quite a bit. Same thing here. We're going to go ahead and throw that font on there to help with class ability because we want to be able to go invisible as often as possible. A lot of the strategy in combat is to basically go invisible and get in close with the glaive before they know you're even there. That's kind of the whole idea behind this particular play style. Obviously, you're going to be using your rifle quite a bit, but when you can go stealth and ambush them with the glaive, that's kind of the strategy we're going for. Same thing here, reduces all ability cooldowns when you use your class ability near targets. Um, so yeah, that is the idea behind this PvP build. Is you're going for speed and stealth. You're trying to basically get around enemies, avoid enemies, and take them out before they realize you're even there. Um, and obviously, that can work to varying degrees depending on what map you're playing. And if, obviously, if you're not playing control, then this is going to be not quite as beneficial, but not necessarily bad either, because once again, if you have high mobility, you can get to the side or behind the enemy, you can really catch them off guard and help your allies, because basically when you have a front on attrition fight, it can get nasty, and that's just like that's tactical firefighting methods to try and flank the enemy. That's military strategy forever, even when it was melee, flank the enemy. You want to get to their sides or their rear because fighting face to face is just a war of attrition. Um, So that's kind of it for that. I don't have anything else to show really. Is the build I was using? Oh no, I forget my build. Oh, that was another one that I was using that actually was pretty good. We're using the multi mock and the Enigma, which is an older glaive. It's one of the OG glaives actually. Well, anyways, I will be putting out some more builds within time here. I'm really kind of starting to experiment a bit more with this since certain armor sets are getting easier to find. Um, but also just, figuring out the tweaks and the bugs and all of that good stuff. And also a lot of weapons that used to not be good are actually good now. So it'll be interesting to see what we can come up with. But anyways, I do appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.